Hello everyone, this is Joseph Holbrook again, and this is part 2 of our discussion of social theory for religious studies. I'm using the book by Seth Kunin, Religion, the Modern Theories, and today we're going to talk about the second chapter, which deals with Emile Durkheim, one of the classic founders of sociology, a Frenchman. And we're going to talk about the derivative movement of functionalism, which emerged out of Durkheim's work. So let me go share my screen with you. There we go. So Emile Durkheim, as I said earlier, was a French sociologist. He published a classic book called The Elementary Forms of Religious Life in 2001. I'm sorry, it was published in 2001, the actual book, but it was first published in 1912. And it was a groundbreaking work which presents an extended argument examining various ideas about the origins of religion and the relationship of religion to society. His work has influenced or addressed issues of functionalism, materialism, idealism, and structuralism, just to name a few. The primary goal of his book, Elementary Forms of Religious Life, is suggested by the title of the work. Durkheim was seeking to establish the basic structures of religion, and he argues that the best way to do that is through an analysis of the simplest form of religion found in the ethnographic literature. Like Freud, Durkheim sees Totemism as the most elementary form of religion. Durkheim also rejects the normative evolutionary assumption that earlier life forms are less true or have less value than later forms. In fact, Durkheim is not specifically interested in the truth or falsity of particular religious doctrines. He argues that there's no such thing as false religions. All religions are a response to a specific societal form, and thus all are true representations of that society. Durkheim specifically addresses the nature of religion and religious truth in a discussion about two alternative theories of religious origins, animism and naturism. Both contained in evolutionary paradigms and viewed the origin of religion as being rooted in a misunderstanding of reality. Basically, they both developed the idea that human beings are awed by nature, and in the case of naturism, they're awed by nature, and that awe eventually turns into religion, to oversimplify it. In animism, it's a little bit different. The rocks and stones and the animals in animism are considered to be spiritual, and there's a strong emphasis on the dream world, and with the dream world and the fear of death, that tends to bleed over and began the earliest, most primal forms of religion. He disagrees with both of them, animism and naturism. One of the key elements in Durkheim's definition of religion is the distinction between the sacred and the profane. This duality is fundamental to Durkheim's understanding of the distinction between understanding of religion. It is equally foundational to his conception of society, which also depends on the ability to conceive of the world in fundamentally distinct categories. This interrelationship between religion and society underlies all of Durkheim's analysis. While religion emerges as a reflection of society, it's also a key building block in the development of society. Durkheim suggests that all religious beliefs share the duality of the sacred and profane. Sacred things are those things that are in some sense set apart and protected. As suggested by his analysis of totemism, in which the totemic object represents the group, Durkheim argues that the sacred is also a representation of the group. The sacred is not limited to any specific object. He suggests that although it is possible to move from the profane realm to the sacred. This can only be done through an elaborate process. The one necessary element in establishing the distinction between the two realms is that it arises from society and not the individual. This last point is necessitated by the fact that a transcendent representation of the group must arise from the group. So Durkheim argues that the sociological study of religion, or indeed any aspect of society, should be concerned with the analysis of social facts, rather than factors specifically relating to the individual. Social facts arise from the society rather than the individual, and at least in part control the individual's ways of thinking and acting. Durkheim's concept underlies a persistent theme in sociology and anthropology, which sees much of our behavior and ways of thinking as being socially constructed. One of the other emphases in Durkheim is the relationship between religion and magic. He sees religion as inherently social. The nature of religious beliefs as social facts is that a specific group holds them. And more than being individually believed, they are something that defines the group and expresses the group's unity. On the other hand, magic is inherently individual. While sharing many of the same elements with religion, for example, rites and beliefs, and growing out of religion, magic is specifically oriented to the individual rather than the group, according to Durkheim. A magician has a clientele, but not a church, according to Durkheim. Unlike religion, which relates to a moral community, he argues that magic never creates a moral community. So Durkheim comes to the following definition of religion. A religion is a unified system of beliefs and practices relative to sacred things. That is to say, things set apart and surrounded by prohibitions. Beliefs and practices that unite its adherents in a single moral community called a church. This definition brings together many of the primary elements of the sacred and profane dichotomy in society. For Durkheim, religion as well as a church is eminently collective. That is, both religion and a church, or the church or churches, are eminently collective. Propitiation of the sacred is nothing more than propitiation of the group. The profane, in opposition to the sacred, becomes a marker for those who are not members of the group. So there's an aspect of group identity here. He suggests that in Totemism, the totemic object is a material form of the divine, and at the same time a symbol of a specific group. He then asks, if the totem is both the symbol of God and of society, are these not the same? So he concludes that all three, the society, the sacred object, and the divine, must all represent the same thing, that is, society itself. Rituals are defined as those formalized practices that are associated with a sacred object. This is particularly significant in Durkheim's analysis, as ritual is the social forum within which religious beliefs and the distinction between the sacred and profane are embodied and enacted. One aspect of ritual, such as music, sacred dance, liturgy, is another concept that he develops called effervescence. I've also read something along these lines in Robert Bella's book, The Evolution of Religion. Ritual, in its creation of effervescence, becomes a particularly strong vehicle for the affirmation of collective identity. Effervescence is an intermittent state created by the group experience. It is found a range of group activities, for example, political rallies. We have one going on this week. I would also maybe add rock concerts, a sports event, the Super Bowl. All of these things generate a type of effervescence that bonds people together, according to Durkheim. He suggests that the effervescence arises from the very act of coming together as a group. Their proximity generates a kind of electricity that quickly transports them to an extraordinary degree of exaltation. Effervescence causes individuals to lose their sense of individuality and to feel united with God and thus with the group. Ritual practice serves the social function of validating and strengthening group cohesion. This brings us to social function, another one of his primary concepts. As indicated in the discussion above, ritual and indeed religion can be seen in part to have a specific social function, that is, of maintaining and strengthening social solidarity. This aspect of the function is a key part of his sociological theory of society and is interrelated with his understanding of different forms of society. Durkheim distinguishes between two forms of society, each of which is based on a different form of solidarity. These two types are the simple societies and complex societies. Obviously, the United States is a complex society. Last semester we studied the Yanomami in the Amazons. That would be a simple society. The form found in simple societies is called mechanical solidarity, and that which is found in complex societies is identified as organic solidarity. Mechanical solidarity is found in societies that have no division of labor and equal access to material resources. It can be characterized as societies in which solidarity is based on similarity. Individuals share a sense of group because their life experiences are essentially the same. Organic solidarity, on the other hand, characterizes societies that have complex social structures and a high degree of division of labor. In these societies, individuals have varied access to societal goods and varied life experiences. You can think of social class, group identity, male, female, gender. These are all part of complex societies and organic solidarity. Thus, solidarity is no longer based on similarity, it is based on interdependence. Complexity and differentiation. This is another area where Durkheim was ahead of his time and foresaw the development of 20th century sociology, which emphasized differentiation and secularization. In his understanding of the relation of religion to society, Durkheim sees an indirect relation between religion and complexity. As society becomes more complex, it breaks down into an increasing number of units. The smaller role religion will play. In other words, as society is more complex and it becomes more differentiated between politics and culture and religion occupies an increasingly diminishing sphere. In simple societies based on mechanical solidarity, there's little or no distinction between different groups. In a simple society, there's really no difference between politics and religion or culture. It's pretty much all one and the same. Religion will be strongest as religion and society are in effect the same. That's a little bit of a preview of theories of secularization. So some criticisms of Durkheim. One is that he uses an evolutionary model. However, it's not fatal to his argument because it's not intrinsic to his arguments, because he affirms the equal value of all religions and societies. Many of his specific uses of Australian totemism no longer fit the ethnographic data. He was depending on data that he gathered in 1910, and a lot of it turned out to be misleading or inaccurate. There's a strong distinction between the sacred and profane in Durkheim. While some societies do make a clear and unbridgeable distinction of this kind, other societies do not necessarily distinguish between these two categories. The importance of the individual. Some critics would say that the individual shrinks away in Durkheim's analysis, and it's all about the collective. Durkheim's theories, in conclusion, Durkheim's theories have been highly influential in both the anthropological and